Signal is a podcast by the Bucks County Beacon. I'm your host and the Beacon's editor-in-chief, Cyril McGlago. Twice a month, we'll use this space to shine a light on the right-wing extremist currents streaming through Bucks County and beyond. We'll talk to guests who will help listeners navigate these perilous political waters by providing insight, analysis, and organizing solutions so that we can steer the community toward calmer, saner, progressive routes. Today we talked to Sean Kitchen, the Keystone Newsroom's political correspondent. Sean just got back from Chicago after covering the Democratic National Convention. Hi Sean, welcome to The Signal.
Hey, how's it going?
So before we get into your experience at the DNC, can you just explain to listeners a little bit about the Keystone Newsroom and the journalism that you and your colleagues produce there?
Yeah, so the Keystone Newsroom here is a progressive media organization here in Pennsylvania, and we are part of the COURIER newsroom network, which is our national brand. So if you're looking to follow us here in the state, it's at the Keystone on Instagram and TikTok, and it's COURIER for those same platforms.
Great. So take us to Chicago. How was it? Describe the atmosphere. What were you seeing, hearing, feeling?
The atmosphere in Chicago was amazing. It was electric. Even before Chicago, here over the past 5 weeks in Pennsylvania, we've seen a lot of rallies and all, with Shapiro being a front runner for the vice president since Biden dropped out 5 weeks ago. That momentum and that enthusiasm, I think, was only amplified in Chicago this past week. You can definitely feel it walking around the city, going to the different breakfasts, going to the different events, talking to delegates at these events, and talking to a lot of the first timers who are there as well.
So tell us about some of these people you spoke with.
Yeah, a lot of the people I talked to while I was there were the delegates. And these are the people who are going to go to the convention in support of the Democratic nominee. At first, that was President Joe Biden. Now that is Vice President Kamala Harris. And these are a wide-ranging, diverse group of people here in every state, especially here in Pennsylvania. You have a lot of progressive delegates, but you also have a lot of older establishment Democrats who are in the same room. While I was out there, I got to talk to House Speaker Joanna McClinton, Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis, someone like State Rep Izzy Smith-Waddell out in Lancaster, who's very progressive, Allentown Mayor Matt Turk, and there's a lot of other got to talk to a lot of other people. But yeah, no, it was really fun. It was a great time out there.
Was there any tension between the kind of progressive wing and the more, moderate establishment Democrats, or did they come to Chicago just unified?
It seems like everyone came on board unified. That was something that was happening before Chicago. It seemed like everyone got behind Harris from the start when she became the preferred candidate after Biden stepped down. And you saw it on display pretty much most of the week here in Harrisburg, or here in, out in Chicago. It seemed like a lot of the people there were unified. There was very little opposition to her, especially inside the convention.
What speeches stood out to you?
I was in there for the weird thing is the way this worked. I wasn't in there for the first night. I was actually trying to get inside the building during that time. So, you are going through media. There are a lot of different security levels you're going through. I missed a lot of the speeches on the first night. So I missed Sean Fain. I missed AOC. When I got inside on Monday night, I was only inside for a half hour because I only had a floor pass to get on there. The rest of the week, we had hall passes for some of our reporters to get in there. I was inside for the last 2 nights of the convention. And I think one of the speeches that really stood out to me, one of my favorite speeches, I know this is going to sound corny what people were saying, but I thought Hakeem Jeffries gave a really good speech. I was getting my Shapiro story written while he was speaking, and I actually had to close my computer and just listen to what he was saying. He's not someone I might agree with politically as a progressive, but these are convention speeches. They're different. They're not big rah-rah speeches, what I thought they would be. But no, these are short, concise speeches. I liked Jeffries on that night. There's also the last night, there was a lot of great speeches. I don't know if anyone stuck out individually, but it's one of those events where you're in the moment, you're listening to it, you're enjoying it, but it's also, you have to take time to reflect upon it because it's also sensory overload.
Sure. I think one of the other things that stood out to me is just how deep of a bench the Democrats actually have. I mean, if you look at some of the politicians that we have across the country, from right here in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro to Gretchen Whitmer, I think AOC really stood out and just kind of like positioned herself as being, someone that's really part of like the party's future.
Malcolm Kenyatta gave a really great speech on Project 2025, I think, on Tuesday night.
Yeah, that brought the house down.
That got a lot of people buzzing. I mean, the thing about like a lot of these speeches too, it's the bench, but a lot of these are up and comers too.
Mhm.
Like a lot of the people like Malcolm and others, they're already known within the delegations as like these rising rock stars, and you don't get to see them like do that unless they have a really viral moment in the legislature or they have a really good speech at the convention. I think a lot of people got to see what Malcolm was about too at the convention.
Yeah, it was a great way to introduce him to the rest of the country because we already know how great he is here in Pennsylvania. Do you think there were any missed opportunities? Or was there any kind of like, just constructive criticisms or critiques of how things were run or what was in the platform, etc.?
I think one of the things that really stuck out to me that I kind of don't agree with personally was the immigration bill that we're
Okay.
talking about. I mean, I think just politically speaking, we're putting out this really conservative immigration bill the whole entire week when this is a voting block within our party, within the Democratic Party. I don't know if that's something that is going to be a challenge going forward with keeping support.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats have to be able to kind of like walk that fine line of, addressing what's happening at the border while still kind of like promoting policies that respect the human rights, of these people coming to America.
I mean, quite personally, I think that's just an issue that Democrats are using to like neutralize, not be on the defensive, but trying to just like counterattacks before they happen. And I feel like that was my only critique, but being in there, seeing people talk about abortion rights, reproductive rights pretty much all the time, bringing out Project 2025, which is something that wasn't really mainstream not too long ago. I mean, it was mainstream in the sense that people were talking about it, but I mean, it's only been within the past couple months I start to see voters actually talk about this organically at different events.
Yeah, and the mainstream media is doing a better job now of kind of reporting about what type of threat this kind of 900-page playbook is for a potential second Trump presidency. Although I still think like locally, for example, here in Bucks County, the Bucks County Courier-Times and the Intelligencer newspapers, the two dailies owned by Gannett USA Today Network, they've done nothing on it. So if people are only getting their news from these two newspapers, then they're just kind of, they're low information voters as far as like what's happening with Project 2025.
I mean, I will say, like, when Harris was speaking about Project 2025 during her committee speech, I don't think you got to hear this that well on the TV, but like there was an audible gasp in the room when she mentioned that Project 2025 was going to hire, or like, Trump was going to bring on an administrator overlooking and tracking women's reproductive cycles and like those type of reproductive healthcare issues. And that was one of those lines that it wasn't an applause line, but it certainly got a gasp out of the room.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, the Project 2025 essentially provides Trump with the building blocks to create a totalitarian state. And that's just one example of how that would happen. I think another good example is how their plan to, deport millions of immigrants, starting day one. What does that security apparatus look like moving forward? What are these like internment camps that they're going to have to build to kind of round up these immigrants? What are they going to look like moving forward? And there's even talk by like Kevin Roberts about potentially like jailing educators and librarians. This is, it's extremely dangerous. And I think that's like one of the good things that happened at the convention was that they really put that front and center. They really educated voters about, what's at stake, the threat that Project 2025 represents, and, why we have to kind of, mobilize voters in order to kind of reject this authoritarian vision for the country.
I was going to add to that. I do agree with how they like mocked it a little bit and, turned it into this like ridiculously oversized textbook, drive the point home with people and kept on bringing that book on stage. I was in there for the Kenan Thompson skit and I thought that was a really good, like effective way of just like explaining of like what's going to be in this.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if they have like a Cliff Notes version for Trump, because there's no way he's reading 900 pages of anything, you know. So in addition to like Project 2025 and reproductive freedom, what other issues do you think are going to continue to drive this, this election moving forward?
I mean, I think reproductive rights is the biggest one by far. I think maybe the Supreme Court might be an issue for some people, and the next person might be appointing a few Supreme Court justices, then who's ever president. But I mean, I just don't know how you can have this election going up, the first election with after Roe v. Wade being overturned, or the first one.
Yeah.
I keep on like it's been really hard to keep track of the past 4 years during the time. But I mean, this is going to be the first election, especially democracy, election security, in the sense of like what they tried to do the last time around. I will say, I think it's another thing that when I was in there, that one on Wednesday night, there was a lot of talk of January 6th and Trump's threat to democracy. This is going to be the first election since then. And I thought it was pretty damning how they played that just 4-minute unedited video, like on clips of scenes from January 6th with like Trump in the background at times.
Yeah, and I fear like what could happen this this time around is going to be a lot worse. I don't think that Trump will concede under any circumstances if he loses. And we already know that, they have a nationwide apparatus that is going to look to kind of gum up the court system with frivolous lawsuits challenging these election results as a way for certain states, not to verify the election. And even here in Pennsylvania, like Trump has released his slate of electors, one of which is Pat Poprick, the Bucks County GOP head, who was a fake elector in 2020. And she told VoteBeat that she would do the same thing again, if there were similar quote unquote legal issues, meaning like frivolous lawsuits that they already plan on submitting. And then, Jim Worthington is on his slate of electors. And he's the local MAGA millionaire whose organization, People for Trump, bussed people to the Capitol that day. So, yes, the democracy is on the ballot this election, and it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. I also think like public education is something that the Democrats could really rally behind, because if you look at these with Moms for Liberty, and here in Bucks County, we had 2 Moms for Liberty majorities in Penridge School District, a supermajority before last election, and then in Central Bucks. And what we saw is that a majority of voters, and even especially in a really red part of the county, like in Penridge School District, were just turned off by the extremism and by these culture war outrages and the book banning and the vilifying of LGBTQ students and accusing teachers of being like pedophiles and groomers. Democrats swept both elections. And I think if you want to if people want to envision what a second MAGA term would be, you just look to how those school boards were run when there was Moms for Liberty Republican majorities, that were like secretly bringing in, the Christian Nationalist Independence Law Center to, rewrite policy, from bathroom policy to book banning policy without any kind of public oversight or transparency.
I will say, I think that's where it's good having Walz on the ticket, a former teacher. One of the things I've been able to do over the past couple of weeks is talk to a lot of retired and current teachers about Walz, and they see him as someone who is going to be able to advocate for education, advocate for teachers, since he was a teacher himself. I think we saw a lot, even in a lot of the stuff regarding around book banning and LGBTQ rights being mixed together at the convention. That was definitely a topic.
What else are you working on right now? What's your election coverage going to be looking like moving forward?
So like right now, I am actually recuperating. I have not. I am still wiped out from the past couple weeks. Like the past 5 weeks have just been something like phenomenal to cover. I never thought we'd be like in a summer like this where we would have a candidate dropping out, and then our governor would become one of the top candidates for one of the top frontrunners to be Harris's running mate. I mean, I feel like after the past 5 weeks and capping it off with the DNC, I actually don't know what's next. One of the things I'm looking at, I really want to start looking into the roles that smaller cities in Pennsylvania are going to be playing in the upcoming election, especially here in like cities like Allentown or Harrisburg or Lancaster. We have one of the things I want to push back on is this notion that like James Carville said back in like the 80s or 90s about Pennsylvania being, Philly, Pittsburgh, Alabama, and in between, where you actually have a lot of these smaller Democratic enclaves and cities all throughout Pennsylvania between Philly and Pittsburgh that are actually going to be running up the score and they're actually going to be important, critical pieces to win Pennsylvania.
And will you be covering the state races as well for Harrisburg?
We are actually going to be looking into the attorney general's race, the Senate race. We're at the Senate race, but we're focusing a lot on like the state, we're focusing a lot on the federal races.
Okay.
I do know I think Democrats should be looking at this. I know that the Senate seems like it's now in play, possibly. Republicans are worried out here in Harrisburg about the Senate being up for grabs, given Harris and the momentum that's been going on. So, I mean, there's going to be things to keep an eye out on.
Is there any other coverage or any other projects like outside of the presidential race that you're working on right now?
No, we are all just bogged down in the campaigns that are going on throughout the state, like covering education and reproductive rights in our main beats. But we are stuck. Yeah, no, we are in election mode right now. One of the fun things about the convention, I don't think we talked about that much, but also like the delegation breakfast, like and how important those are. Like you see a lot of the stuff on TV at the convention, but you don't see a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes. A lot of this is being stuck in conference rooms, being stuck in convention, like an actual convention center, in like different smaller rooms. A lot of this wasn't, a lot of the fun things was actually like going to the breakfast in the mornings when you have the different politicians from the different states coming in. So in Pennsylvania, on Tuesday and Thursday, like Ro Khanna or Cory Booker and Chris Coons were all in there. Or you're standing in the hallway and you just see the elevator open up and an entourage of like 15 to 20 Secret Service members walking through. And here it turns out it's Gwen Walls going into the breakfast. So like it's a very like insider feeling. And I think when you get into another fun thing was walking around the convention itself on the outside, like in the concourse of it and just like the circus that's going on. You have like influencers out there, which they were a big part of this convention that seemed to like irk the media a bit. The role the social media influencers and TikTok stars were playing, but it was an overall like circus atmosphere.
In the end, like, what do you think is going to kind of decide this election? Because it's still close. I mean, Kamala Harris obviously has a lot of momentum and a lot of upswing right now, but the country is still pretty evenly divided, at least if you're looking at the polls.
I think it's close, but I think the momentum is starting to shift in Harris's favor. I mean, it's one of the things I feel like, you're going back to 2008 where Obama was like the hope and change candidate, where I feel like this is what Harris is going to capture going forward. A lot of people were talking about joy and being happy for the first time in a while. A lot of people are re-engaged in politics. And I really think you saw that at the convention the whole entire week. I mean, this convention went from being what could have been a 4 or 5 day funeral for the Biden administration to like an absolute just party. It was funny. We were talking to some German news producers on the way out from the different, I guess from like the AP or like the BBC equivalents. And one of the producers said she was at every convention since 92. And this convention topped Obama and Clinton in 92 and 04 or 08.
Wow.
Yeah. And a lot of the people, the consensus from people, they're starting to admit it now. They think that the Harris convention topped Obama's first convention in 08.
That's pretty remarkable. But you did get that sense watching it. And there was a stark contrast between the Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, the Republicans were all about kind of anger, resentment, grievances, this kind of toxic masculinity, as well as just like, while there was like, American flags that, just more positive messaging in the Democratic convention.
Yeah, they definitely ramped up the patriotism.
Yeah. And I think Michael Smerconish like recently was saying how he thought like Democrats were trying to kind of like take patriotism back from the Republican Party.
Yeah. I mean, like, I would say like, so when I got there on Monday, I got onto the floor right after Jason Isabel played. And by that point, right after Isabel got off stage, everyone in the green vests pretty much like were on the floor, like the people like keeping the aisles cleared, and you can see them on the TV the whole week. We were getting ready for Harris to come on stage, make a surprise appearance, and I just happened to be like right by the stage, like in the convention floor as that was going on, which will remarkably be like one of the it's like the 30 minutes I will never trade away for ever anything like in my career at this point. Like 30 minutes you're on the convention floor and Harris comes out and you're standing with your delegation. Right after she speaks, Steve Kerr comes out, goes on stage, and literally everyone had their USA signs ready to go, like as he's speaking. So it's just like you're on the floor and you just see a sea of these USA signs going up and like everywhere. I mean, it's exactly what you saw on TV.
Whereas at the GOP convention, there was mass deportation signs, which seemed a little grim.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, definitely. I thought the last night you could really feel the energy in there. I think the last night is going to be one of these things where like Urban Legend is just going to have this crowd size grow more and more as like the years go on, especially if she ends up winning this election. Yeah, they had the fire marshals closing it down by 7:00. I ended up getting a hall pass. I ended up getting a pass into the building at like 5:00 in the afternoon. I wasn't even supposed to be in there that night, and I made it there at the very last like possible second. Every seat was packed. You had the standing room only area was filled, which is like the very last. Imagine like the very last row of the nosebleeds, and then you're like there's like 10 feet of like space between the last seat and the concrete wall of the stadium. That was the standing room area. So you're all the way up literally in the rafters, looking down. You can't even see the floor. Like we were watching it on like big screen TVs that were just like above the seats. I mean, just even being in there and not being able to like really see it, you could still feel the electricity in there that whole night.
Wow. And do you think the Harris Walls campaign has now recaptured the attention, if not the support of, millennials and Gen Z voters?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like you could see it there. I mean, I feel like you could see it on different platforms too. Like especially like we're a very social media platform based organization. You could see it like, by the way, just people are responding. Our national brand, I think, has added 400,000 followers on TikTok in the past month.
Wow.
Like and I guarantee most of that growth has probably come from millennials. Don't quote me on it, but I mean, you can see it, you can feel it. There were also a lot of younger people there as delegates, people who are millennials and Gen Z, and it was good catching up with them.
That's great. Well, let's end on that positive note, because I do think like that is, a constituency that was lagging, during the Biden campaign. I think there was like a lack of enthusiasm, within that voting bloc. But Sean, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone, if you don't follow Sean Kitchen on Twitter, and if you're not following the Keystone Newsroom, you absolutely need to. They're doing great progressive reporting that matters about the issues that matter for this upcoming election. So in the show notes, I'll leave Sean's Twitter handle, Penslinger, and links to the Keystone Newsroom in there for you to follow. And you can sign up for the Keystone Newsroom's newsletter as well. But Sean, thanks again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
This has been The Signal, a podcast by the Bucks County Beacon. I'm Cyril Migaleko, editor-in-chief and host. For more progressive news, analysis, and opinion from Bucks County and beyond, go to www.buckscountybeacon.com.